Hello. Excuse me, caller from area code 208. You're on Astral Quest. Can you hear us? Okay, that caller may be having some technical issues. Let's take another call here. Wholeness caller, you are on Astral Quest.
Yes.
You want to, if you can, go ahead and mute your line and ask your question. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, yeah. So what do? I just hold until it picks up, or what?
Okay. Oh, excuse me. No, you just have to hit mute. I'm going to let her go ahead and get that information. All you have to do is push mute on the live stream or just close the page. And to all our people that are listening in, I do apologize. It's just one of those drawbacks of being on a streaming channel, so people don't get the information into somewhat of a lag. But just for that call, that you are on the air, just so that you know.
Oh, me? I'm on the air?
Yes, you are.
Oh, well, I have a question about reincarnation. And in one of the books that I have read, what is it, Soul Metrics, it was stated that it's soul retrieval. Reincarnation is soul retrieval. And I was a little bit familiar with it. I'm familiar with, I don't know if you know of Robert Morningstar.
Yes.
But he says that when you die, not to go towards the light.
Okay, let me explain to you the entire...
So what do you say about that?
Well, let me explain the entire process, but I'm going to need you to see if you can close the page that that the live stream is on, just because we're talking directly through Skype, so you'll be able to hear me.
Oh, okay. So you don't want. Okay. So I should just turn this off.
Yeah, just turn the actual live stream page off. I do apologize. We do need to kind of find another way to do these calls, but of course, since we're using Skype, all the audio is through Skype now. But let's just understand the reincarnation process in itself in the steps, because once you're leaving the physical body. Let me just close this window here. Once you leave the physical body, at this point, then now you're taking everything that you've collected at that point. And so your ray or your shine or your light has a certain spectrum to it. Let's call that just the biorhythm. Okay, so now what happens is you are going to now find another vessel that is compatible with where you're going next. You see what I mean? So how that works on our planet is when the male and the female come together, there is obviously a magnetic and electric somewhat or a pranic attraction, and that gives off a light. And of course that builds when you're working out, and that builds if you're having intercourse or whatever, and also builds with genuine feelings like you really loving someone. And so when two individuals get together that are giving off the exact biorhythm that being that is searching for their next vessel is giving off, then it goes into it. Okay, so it's really easy because it's like a magnetic thing, and that's why maybe they say, well, don't go into the light, because you're going to go into another reincarnation, but you're also going to go into another reincarnation that is calibrated for where you just left off. So
okay. So then my understanding prior to listening to Robert Morningstar is that you're constantly progressing from lifetime to lifetime.
Yes, you are.
Right?
And this is how it was naturally put together. And of course, today has been about what can hinder that progression. Because now we're at a stage in our society where you can be coerced to do things that will break your DNA or take you further down the ladder rather than bring you up the ladder. But also you can easily see it as another expansive part of what we're going to experience, because it just teaches us how to have the proper responsibility and make the right choices when it comes to things of the spiritual nature. Like, I'm sure if you're dealing with a completely spiritual environment, you need some type of level of discernment to handle yourself properly, just like you would need if you went to anywhere else that had no laws. Let us think about that. Like we always think about how free space is, or the ocean, or how free heaven is. Let's say that. Now, in reality, what we're talking about is we're talking about something very similar to the ocean. There's no real limitation to what can come out of the ocean and how many different things and how they look in the ocean. You see what I mean? And so that's why our ocean, if we want to understand just everything that exists in space per se, we can look into all the different entities that live within the ocean and see just how many variations you would get. And so, yeah, the incarnation thing is definitely something that also came up as a major thing to figure out how to govern or change. And this is kind of birthed the tone or birthed the word professional reincarnation. And this is basically, you need a vehicle to reincarnate into, but what if you choose, one, either not to reincarnate, or two, to change what vehicle you're going to reincarnate into? And to gain such things, you would definitely need to know what's called realm dynamics. This means that you've been out of the body before. Before you died, you had actually come out of the body and start learning how to kind of move around the planes, etc. And then, so when you die, and this is, of course, generally the difference between a person that's very adept versus a person that's neophyte. When they die, the depth, it's been to that plane before that we're calling death. And, it's just unfortunate that the words that we're using equal such a darker tone, because really it comes a time where we need to be neutral. You see what I mean? Like, we don't need to be thinking in fear right when we're about to make exit. You know what I mean? We need to be calm. And so, there's a lot of dynamics to why there's a lot of fear there. And that's why sometimes when we have to dig really low, we have to get into what's going on with the religions and things like that. But the real knowledge behind this is very simple if you're talking about frequency. It's just there's certain procedures at times that you need to follow to make sure that you can stay in these frequencies. And also look at how the energies continuously build, meaning every full moon, whatever's going on with Earth seems to be getting stronger. So this means that at some point, let's say in 10 years, let's not even talk about like tomorrow or next month or give ourselves dates like 2012. Let's just say in 10 years, we would already have to have locked into perpetual energy for our existence to even be at hand. And here's another thing. I think that if we were extinct in the future, we would feel it now. I mean, I don't think... do you understand what I'm saying with that?
We would be feeling it now if we were extinct in the future?
Exactly.
No, I don't.
You see how a person has instinct and they know when something is like wrong or something's going to happen and something, right? Okay. Now, just individually when you search into yourself, not what the media is saying and not what they cooked up with the 2012, do you feel like you're going into like the end of yourself, or do you feel like you're going into something that's going to reveal more of who you are?
Wow. I would say both.
Well, and that's very interesting, because that's actually what this world, that's the actual, if you wanted to lock into what are benefits of worlds like this, is that you actually learn how to operate a vehicle, but both of them. It's like now, the next level obviously for you is having the ability to completely have control over your astral body, or the one that you see in the dream, while also having your rights and freedom here on the planet that you exist on. Like, we don't have to accept one or another. And that's why I'm glad I took you on the call today, because it's just amazing, because sometimes when a person is stuck trying to figure out which one or another, in many cases you choose both, because that's how the body is configured if you're doing it the proper way. And then these two combined together, of course, give you a perfect balance. So awesome. Is there anything else that I can assist you with?
Yes. You were talking about, you don't have to deal with the physical part of it. All you got to do is just change your frequency. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think about listening to these different, how does it pronounce? Solfeggio or
solfeggio and tones and frequencies, etc.?
The different frequencies. What do you think about listening to a lot of different frequencies? Is that helpful, or is that useless?
What I found out is that you generally have to It's like if you're going to use the proper tool, notice like if you're going to take off a tire, you need to use this hexagram, right? But so if you're going to deal with the body, it's almost like your tool has to be, in essence, a triangle because it's a physical plane. So this means mentally, physically, and spiritually, you have to work on raising the frequency. And generally, you want to do those simultaneously so that way it raises itself. So let me just walk you through this step by step. What happens with the body is on a physical level, it's literally like the density or the resistance level of the body and how well it can conduct frequency. And so if you saw it as, like they say, gold is a very good conductor, you can see your body also as how fast you think and how much you can remember and how much you can access in your auric field, etc., is based on your pranic charge. Some people see that as electricity because it feels like electricity if someone touches you and they have a high level of it going through them. So what happens?
That's why you have to eat good food.
Well, again, there's more components to this because the good food is one of them, but it's an environment thing too. And that's why Kundalini in many instances, there was someone calling in, but Kundalini in many instances was not something that a person could write one perspective on the Kundalini or the pranic energies. They had to tell a person from basically all three angles. So food is one of them, but let's just understand the mind, the body, and the soul in their individual stances. What happens if we want to start with the body is, yes, that what you really need is chlorophyll. What happens is there's basic eating principles. Obviously, you don't want to take in too much poisonous plasma or blood or animal flesh. And obviously, you don't want to take in too much fried or overbaked cooked things, etc. Too many things with yeast that build worms, etc. So now let's talk to the individual who's accomplished that and see if they've flown off to space recently. And you'll find no. So you'll see, and we'll just speak the truth, that just because you go and you eat everything raw now, it doesn't mean that you're going to the highest expansion of your consciousness. It's almost a disappointment, right? Especially after you bought the Vitamix for $1,000. So what happens though is that you got one part. Now the mind has so much, and that's why much of the media and all this is working on the mind, because that's where the controllers have made the most progress. So what it goes with the mind is just a basic principle. You can't give out all of your energy because everything is really internal. So if there's this external God or external this and external that, now it's coming out. So if you happen to give out more than you're getting in, which would definitely be based on the vividness of whatever you're interfacing with on a spiritual level, meaning that if this spiritual energy, let's say for instance you have a God, is true, then it should be able to come and see you and conversate with you on a regular level like me and you are talking. And of course, most people will find that doesn't happen in their spiritual experience. And of course,
yeah, but how do you know? Because your mind can play tricks with yourself, and the devil is very keen on this. How do you know that you're talking to the highest God? How do you know that?
That's a good question. That's a question of discernment, harmony. When what's spoken, generally when you're talking to the graduated consciousness, people call this the oversoul. They see it no different than the perfected version of themselves, not as something external. But when you're receiving information from that, it's relative to the situation going on. You'll notice that much of the confusion level of conversation that goes on in the mind is either past tense, because the entities that purport that kind of thing going on in the mind don't see far into the future, or it's very low because as you know, your body is full of eyes, but the actual energies and where they are is in a lower area of your body. So they're using a lower eye to predict to you or talk to you and say things to you. So generally you can see it as that. Like you can see where the conversation kind of ties into to those kind of natures, but easily see your body as the actual thermometer or meter itself. You got the bird-like energy up top, and then you got the snake-like energy in the bottom, and all of the entities are standing on themselves to make the complete body. So they are working in harmony. If people want to understand, well, how is this even working if there's so much confusion? Well, no, there is a harmonic level to it, but it's very similar to the body. The body is all working together, but surely the ear is not the heart. And surely the leg is not the head. You see, there's different parts, but they all make up the entire thing. And that's their only agreement. Other than that, they're always trying to exercise more control than the other, right? So basically, if you step out of the body, you'll notice the body is all, the arm wants to use itself more than the right, left, or they say that the leg wants to step out in front of the other leg. They call that walking. There's, of course, there's inclinations, is how they used to say it. Inclinations coming from the animal parts of our body, the genes. Right? And now this is not, again, so much of the biblical story, then it's how things have to be, especially if you can go to India and still find a kid with a tail. So this means that, or with a horn, this means that there's still animal genes inside the composition, not still, but is animal genes inside the composition of every human fleshly body. Now, it also means that that fleshly body is endowed with a certain level of reason. It doesn't mean it's as wise as a soul, but it does mean that it can think the same way that a dog or a cat or any other animal that is basically well-bred can think. So now we start getting to how the body can even talk and be totally separate from the soul, but actually recommend, man, let's go out, or I don't like her. And this is just the body talking now. And sometimes when you look at this whole thing, you see lots of things talking. And that's why some of these belief systems, they'll at least kind of clue you in on being able to still your mind. It's almost still is synonymous with taking it back. So who are you taking it back from? And now in the physical reality, how this will play out, so we don't get too much into the spiritual realm, it's when you have so many people around you and each one's tugging on you for this and tugging on you for that, and you can't even take care of yourself, and then everything's haywire. And then next thing you know, you end up on a full moon and everything is now intensified. So now your energy that was supposed to be used to propel you into the next level of your harvest has been drained away by basically backbiting, snake-acting people. And again, only a metaphor, not necessarily an entity within itself, although I'm sure man's mind can bring anything out of the shadows if he focuses on it long enough, because that's just how we are. But in the reality, it's a way or a trait that means I can never get higher than where I am. And so now we have to see like all of this, this connection. Like what I'm here also to do is I'm here to unify and I'm here to integrate. I'm not here to divide. But in order for people to understand the other components that exist in the reality with them, i.e. the other entities that exist in the reality with them, then they're going to also need to hear their plight. Meaning, why are we all here together anyway if it's all about frequency? That says a lot about where our frequency is. How would our frequency be even adjacent to theirs? Wouldn't we just be way out there? Well, that's where you start getting to the convincing. Like each life, it could be as simple as, like I told you, it's a mind, body, soul thing. So if you never look at it that way, you could miss it. But just on a spiritual level, something can convince you to give up your energy for that entire lifetime. That entire life, you're just looking to something else to give you something. Then now you got spiritual lifetime, that's down pat. Then they'll switch the cog. Now it's physical. So all life, let's say you're an athlete. You're dedicated to the sport. And nothing else is going on with you beside the sport. Or then next life, the cog spins again and you're a scholar. Now you're studying 10, 15, 20 years, getting super compartmentalized, never realizing all is self. You see what I mean? So also understand with the reincarnations, and this is why some people weren't very fond of it, is it had the way of just taking you back through the same lessons or the portions of the same lessons again so that you can learn them. But here's the trick. You don't live as long as you used to. See, they keep telling that in the book that mankind used to live a lot longer. We used to live a lot longer. We have more years. So if you have 500 years of physical life, come on, you'd be super wise, basically. Imagine what you are now, and then this is not even the beginning. You're still a baby, in real tense. So if you're living 400 or 500 years, of course you're going to realize how to progress your soul and expand it properly. And that's why before 8,500 years ago, humanity was not bad off. Like, that's what people have to understand. Like, they always think my stories are doom and gloom, but I can take you before 8,500 years ago is when we were managing the system properly and we understood what we were doing here. And that's when, and again, there's a point that demarks that when we allow the entry of a foreigner, one that is grafted to the tree. This is even how they write it in the text, grafting to the tree. This means humanity is seen as one big family tree. Humanity is as they have their genus. When something grafts itself to the tree, this means it's assimilable, meaning it can live in your reality, but it doesn't mean that it's exactly like you. Now, of course, through all of this will completely expand those of us who make it through it, meaning that if someone gets out of this, you'll be an incredible individual. So there's always that. But there's also this other situation going on, like what you see in the third world countries, et cetera, where people are bottoming out. And then if you're supposed to have a soul and you're supposed to feel and you're supposed to have a heart and love, and you see this, but you don't feel anything, does it mean that that soul, heart, love is gone? And that's also where you get this, the idea of the cold-hearted one, is that their soul, heart, spirit is basically gone. Now, here's the secret. Serpent is synonymous with flesh. Now, remember I told you that the flesh had its own mind, and it still wasn't as smart as the spirit, but it has its own mind. So what if there's something that's wholly comprised of flesh? It really has no soul as we think of it. It's just nothing but flesh. That's where you get the term the beast. Now, the beast is meant to be the inclinations, meaning the actual inclinations that we have that make us hungry. Now, if I don't feed you, what happens? So now we can get to the root. We can get to the root of whether we're talking about something that really exists or something that they actually made up. Now, of course, when they want to bring a beast into an external reality and make it some type of ravager with horns, we lose the point. But when you take it as even from a child, when the child comes out of the womb, the child gets very aggressive and screams very loud if it doesn't get any of the breast in the milk. So there is if you really want to know what the ancient mysteries are, you only look into life. You don't go looking into a book. And if you happen to look into the book, it has to match up with life. And so that's the doctrine in which before 8,500 years ago we were going by. If you want to know, well, if these people were so advanced and so great, then where did all this knowledge and application come from? That it came from them actually living and existing. It was hard-coded within them. Then what you see that changes, and you can fly into Samaria and watch how it took place, is you see a new code called Hammurabi. If you take it, it's really Ham the rabbi. That also synonymous which is why Abraham is also from the tribe of Ham. But basically, Ham, the son of Noah, one of the major son of Noah that actually is one of the ones that escaped the flood. So now you're getting into their story, by the way. That individual set itself up as king and basically did the unbelievable. They call this the abomination that set up desolation. Basically saying that I am God and the only God. This is recorded in the Gnostic text of Barbello, that basically the entity that the Masons worship, Illuminati worship, is Yalda Baal. It is a real living entity known as Lucifer, the fallen star, etc. And that energy, there was no more place for it in heaven. Now, notice what they're actually saying. They're saying that there's no place for this kind of mentality and this kind of way of being here. We've decided that this place is going to be everything that is not that. And then it says, watch out, earth, he's coming down, or it's coming down to you. See, what they're actually saying, if you can read the riddle, is that this test is coming to you, but it's inside. And it's about your animalistic nature and whether that is actually going to propel you into the higher worlds, because it's not allowed in the higher worlds because there's no consumption. See, animalistic nature connects with the canine, which connects with the covenant of Sirius. And it has everything to do with consumption, which is why it's called Big Five. Big Five is the pentagram. The pentagram is identified in Chinese I Ching as fire versus wood versus water, etc. So what they're actually saying is that this test comes to each and every single individual, each lifetime, of whether or not they can actually figure out many of the entities and energies that have been put to test them. And so this is funny because it's almost like just then, if you just can relax for a moment, you see it as a book or just a simulation running. Not so much as making it animated as something that's really going to be able to defeat you, because you can't be defeated. If you still understand what's really going on here, you're a mortal soul that needs to understand the full expansion of what a complete tree looks like. So again, a seed, or a star, aka a star seed, the reason why humans are star seeds, and that's not necessarily a New Age term, is because the elements and chemicals that are used to make humans, not all of them are found on this particular planet. And of course, the reason for that is that things from other planets, i.e. semen, came from other parts of the constellation and fertilized Earth, and then she began to beget. And that's why it says, the sons of God, semen, saw that the daughters of man, mammal, man doesn't mean a man. Man is ma, man is the matriarch. Man is the mammal, man is the flesh. You see what I mean? The flesh, that's why the world was synonymous with being a serpent or Tiamat herself. But it was seen as a sheath or a womb or something that basically envelops light until it develops into another stage, and then it releases it from the womb. Great. Now we have the secret mystery. But what if we got idiots that are putting nets over it? This is where you get the term fishers of men, where when it's time for you to progress, you should have been gone 20,000 lifetimes ago. You're still here repeating the same lessons over and over again that you've already learned. There's nothing left for you to do now but make a mistake. So you've done it right so many times, and then you can't see progress. So what happens basically when you do everything right and it doesn't work? What is responsible for that? And this is also the deeper insight that I'm giving to people, is that it's the planned net. It's the Indra net, meaning that you have to also learn how to circumscribe the net, meaning that everything that, how they've reanimated things and termed it different ways, and you may not know that it's in a new package, in a new form. You have to be able to isolate it going on in your life so that you can pass through that net. And so how this will work is that you notice how also what came along with organizations such as any religion, but mainly the New Age movement, was a bunch of god dog madness. Basically, a lot of new entities to worship and to believe in. Now, if you want to know the climax of that, meaning if you took in 33 million gods, then you would get into India or Persia in its heyday. They had 33 million gods. And what human life pretty much consisted of was there was a god for waking up, a god for breakfast, a god for lunch, and our whole life was spent doing that. So we got the t-shirt. Now it's about time for us to realize all of what we've actually learned from all this God knowledge, all the universe, science, and scion, or basically psi means a simulation, not even a real world. So all of this stuff that's been added, we have to see this is the point that you make your move. And this is also what I have to tell people. Don't let this time where you have access to all this knowledge transpire for too long without you getting it. Like what I often do is
How do you make sure you do get it?
You got to make sure that you're able to absorb the information properly. If you see that in one of your vehicles, mind, body, or soul, it won't absorb properly like you know it should absorb by comparing yourself with other absorbents, meaning others that are absorbing, then you immediately go into diagnosing the problem. Throw yourself on the table like a master surgeon and open yourself up. And don't be afraid to definitely ask the question. But remember that this is not something that was ever meant to be delivered in 2 hours, 3 hours worth of conversation. But the facts really are is that we can walk you completely through. All the information is there on the website. Unfortunately, we're working to put it all in the order. But to finish off the conversation, you have to isolate mind, body, or soul. What is the chink in your armor? What is the real Achilles heel for you in space with your ship? Have you crash landed your ship? And then once you identify that, you only need to shoot out an email or a query into the Resistance platform, and you'll find the solution for that. So basically what you're doing is you're putting this thing back together. But don't make the mistake in thinking that it's already together. That's, of course, why ego was installed. And this is something to everyone, not directly to you. But ego, or the eagle, was installed because the eagle is also a carrion. See, the problem with this knowledge of the snake and the bird, right, is that many people see that the bird is the good one, and then they missed it. Anytime you emancipate completely through any knowledge system, there is no good one. You'll understand that there's always a fair measure of both of them. But what happens is that if you start to isolate and focus on one thing too much, everything comes out of balance. So here's the story of the bird. Notice how you often see the snake with wings. And this is because in genus, this is something that goes on in your reality, not something that just went on in the Bible or any other spiritual book that may be fictitious at times. But snakes transfer themselves into birds through their evolution. that snakes and even fish and birds are synonymous with each other. So these were meant as metaphors of when one's going through different states of still fleshly life. Because then in the bird-like state, which is known as the Aryan, okay, these are the ones that were in India. These are the ones, they had the blue-faced god because they actually were Nagas that rose themselves up into the godlike position. This is why, again, the whole mystery behind this is that when man raises himself up and says that he is God and the only God, this becomes the greatest issue, because this then means that nobody else has this level of potential, and then it becomes a hindrance for everyone. So when they say they rose up in the wilderness, they told Moses, raise up the staff to Nehushtan in front of the people so that all of those that were bitten by the serpents can be healed. Okay, so then the brazen rod is raised up, which is, of course, synonymous with the Caduceus rod today, used in medicine for healing. But this same thing is going on with Jesus, because now he's also the Nazarite, Nazi, or a leader of the Sanhedrin. That's what that means. And now they've raised him up on this cross, which of course is earth. They raised him up as a Lord, which means over all of the people that accept him as Lord. And now he's basically controlling things. So do you see that you can walk through it all, but now I'm talking about some of the mental kinks that bleed into spirituality, because this is something that you also have to see. Each of these vehicles, mind, body, and soul, seem to bleed into each other. Sometimes the mind can convince the body to do amazing things. In fact, that's how most athletes push themselves forward, is with their mind. Very few of them have tapped into their spiritual force. So what you have going on is that you just have to make sure, I didn't really catch your name, ma'am, but you do have to make sure that, Julie, is it? Okay, well, you do have to make sure, Julie, that you put that that particular perspective of looking at what may be going on. And so some of the pointers, again, just to brush over it one more time, because I don't have a problem with time. Because somebody's like, I got to go, it's time to get off, but there's no time for me. So it's really just getting you to understand this, because there's at least 100 other listeners that also need to understand it. When you're talking about the frequency of the body, you're looking into your chlorophyll more, because remember, red blood is from the animals. Green blood then, quote unquote, is from the plants. And this is why there's a difference only between the iron and the magnesium, between plasma and chlorophyll. Okay? So we know that according to the esoteric laws and what's been going on, that the beings that make it into the heights of the trees, which is a higher level, they are green, or they utilize the green, not the red, because the red are for those that are utilizing the earth or the lower force of the body, which of course is the genital area.
Right, the green is the heart force.
Exactly. So when you're looking at something every day and you say you eat whatever you eat, when you talk about how much chlorophyll you even take in ahead of broccoli, do you see why cows as mammals eat grass all day? It's because it would take all day for you to get enough of that broccoli to actually equal a healthy level of chlorophyll so the body can keep regenerating itself from what? Sunlight. This doesn't mean, of course, worship the sun. This means just accept the obvious. The sun is really what's making the flowers grow. There's an energy coming from the sun higher at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, especially for that 15-minute period in there. But there's an energy that actually makes things form and grow. It also makes your ideas grow, everything. So if you're well watered around that time, then you can expect to grow. The next thing is that the filters. Everything is like an eye in the body. Like when I believe personally the body is actually flipped inside out. I can't actually show you what that would look like, but I think we're looking at it, that it's literally an organism that has been turned inside out. And that's the version that we're seeing, is the inside out version, the one we think is so pretty. So what happens is that with these organs, it looks like that they are themselves eyes. And also major constellations. I believe the trick is to tell you that your heart chakra is Venus. It doesn't really work like that. That would just be like to say that all of your genealogy is is Moorish, basically. So what you really have going on is there's other constellations in the sky beside Venus, Saturn, and the rest of those guys. And often, many of them appear to be a lot bigger, even from visual standpoint at night, right? So this means that they're only choosing to select Saturn and Mars and Neptune for the ones that they're telling you are the correspondence to your chakras. It's direct hacking. Excuse me for me cutting this off. There's no way for me to do it edgewise, but I just had to do it that way, but that's the noise that we're hearing. But it's only because someone's trying to call in. But again, so what you're really dealing with here is, because I kind of lost my train of thought just for a moment. If you could refresh my memory.
The color green and the chakras and the different colors, and you're saying that there's...
Oh, okay, yeah, the planets. Like basically the planetaries correspondence to the chakra center, which is very important because you really need to understand the jewel correspondence to the chakra center. This is where the jewel, or which is generally semi-precious stone, or also the tektite, which is just a meteorite, which are often very inexpensive also, can help you in fixing a problem. Now, this is what I have to tell people, because some people are like, well, what are you telling me? I can't really ascend without crystals? That's not what I said. What I said was, if you were still in the baby's body, meaning that the body, let me just turn this on, do not disturb, that'll actually help us. The baby's body is actually calibrated to do everything that you need to do if the baby had the knowledge to do it, okay? So if the body was in that stage, then it would, that's why most of the time babies don't sleep, by the way. But anyway, if in that stage, if your body was still like that, there would be nothing that you needed. So let's get that clear. So when you do damage to the body, then you need certain things to fix the damage that has been caused. You have to find basically the element that is needed to fix the problem. Now, let's say you're from Nebular 33.50, okay? And what happens is that you're now low on a certain mineral, tektite, that you can't get on Earth. So where do you get it? Where can you get the stardust that's needed so that the DNA that corresponds to it can see, once again, an image of itself and perfect itself? Right? Because that's all that's really happening. It just needs to see, what was I like again? Because I'm all screwed up in here. I took impact. And then so, well, here's what you used to look like. Oh, okay, great. Now I'm fixed. And then the ladder keeps correcting itself, okay? Now, where you get it is anything gliding through space will pick it up. Because these molecules are so small, they're just as small as the scent molecules that flow through the air that make you smell whatever it is that's giving off the scent. It was always so amazing to me to see, like they have this electron picture of a garlic, and they show you how many of these scent spores are coming off of it. And they're saying, yeah, that's why you can smell it, because each of these spores make it to even over to the other side of the room, right? So it's the same thing with these elements that are needed. So you can oftentimes pick them up from this. Now, here's another thing, to not keep it too far off, even though you can see the logic within being able to restore certain elements that you're missing. There is a magnetic energy to the crystal. That's how its formulation is able to stay as such. It's bonded. So what happens is that with your chakra center, they're like wheels that are unbalanced. So if you crank one of them up, which some people do in the Namaste meeting, humming the wrong tones and vibrations, and then they open themselves up and the wheel's completely off balance, and then they experience that they actually have scars them to where they stay polarized into that chakra. So what happens is that you have to basically magnetically buffer. This would be like walking around the plane before you take off. You have to magnetically buffer the chakra, which is very similar to a disc or a space shuttle, as what they see a UFO as, before you try to take off with it. So to do that, you need the magnetic force that actually corresponds to that chakra. And to get that magnetic force, you utilize the crystals that correspond with that chakra to you. Because remember, the chakra is a flowing system, so it's like a wheel. So just because you put one crystal down on the bottom area doesn't mean that the essence that is really needed on the top won't get there. But it does also mean is that once you perfect it, because you're studying yourself, not other gods and everyone else, that you're studying yourself, once you perfect it, you'll feel a difference when you actually place the crystal in the right place. But remember, one of the big keys to this, so that it becomes vivid, not something that you can kind of feel and you just don't know whether, it's happening or not, and this begins to discourage you, and then energy system's low again, because you're going to need, of course, the encouragement. The vivid experience gives you the encouragement, but realize that you're dealing with something that has to be able to conduct properly. So when you're talking about the body, the trace minerals, even the Ethereum products, these, and also the internal cleansing, cleansing the organs in the proper order. These kind of things help the machine and help the system work itself better. Excuse me, I know some people are freaking out, oh my goodness, not a machine, but let me recant that. It helps the body to actually do what it needs to do in order to be able to carry the charge. Because here's what happens. A lot of people are talking about that they want to expand into these higher states of consciousness. And, oh, I've been there. But what happens is that if you don't have a really good ground, you can actually lose your mind. It is the real warning against Kundalini and raising energies into centers that are not buffered properly. So remember, the reason why I'm talking about magnetic buffering is because that's generally why when the energy goes up into those chakras that it's not ready, because the person's higher chakras are also damaged. See, when you see the whole body, you don't actually see the higher chakras as the good ones. You actually see that even the lower chakras are used. That's like the fertilizer, as I said again. So, and then in the higher chakra, the idea is that's what propels the entire body into the next level of existence so everyone can still do what they're doing now. Meaning, why you see all these people running around acting like they are halfway asleep, they're still a foundation to something major. So they're still, in retrospect, allowing you to actually still stay static in this reality to progress and do something. Because it's still a world. That's why it functions like a body. All of us still in this, still going to work, still, you know, on the radio show, giving the people the relief that have to go to work, etc., still functions together. But nobody ever said that we couldn't enhance it. And so that's, of course, the major part of when you jump into the spirituality is you have all of these systems and guidelines that are supposed to be the only ones. But you have new creations. See, this is an ode to why things are not the same. Oh, well, but you can't use the same laws and rules and systems and edicts and decrees for everyone. This is not a cookie cutter. The universe is not doing cookie cutter. So each person is going to need a different level of attention in order to assist them on their expansion. And so that's really what we're here for, because if you find someone that happens to be close enough to you to where you can help them progress, then you found a like partner indeed and a companion to glide throughout space with. Not someone that you have to drag throughout space and they're leached onto you and they don't even want to leave where they are. You see? So there's still a difference in what we talked about today, and that's why we need to know those differences. Here's why. You think deep about yourself because you're a deep person. But what happens is that if you're using the wrong codes, that's why some people, they think very fast about themselves. I'm mad. And they just basically said a couple words and sent out a couple reflections. But in reality, what's really, really here for us is that we have a language that's so much more deeper. And it's like, but why we're using this language, we have to be exact. Because just like I said, as a computer, if you send out the wrong signal, it won't respond. Either you put in the right password and it opens, or it doesn't open. This is how the body and the whole pentagram 5-base nature thing works. Either you complete what they called sometimes the great work, what they called the arcana, even though now all these terms are synonymous with wickedness now. Because the people who took those terms always are doing evil things with the energy. Look, they got a Hadron Collider. Are they feeding homeless children with it? No. Then what use is it? You see what I mean? We can have the medium Q space modulator down here, but if we can't relieve the world's pressure and perfect its balance, then what does that say about the device itself? And so that's, of course, also where we become adept, because we see it like that. We don't just say, well, you know, they're doing the best they can. That's not what's going on. What's going on is they have a king that's over them that is using hypnotism and illusion and languages and guys like Disney to keep us all behind for multiple lifetimes, and their gig is up. That's actually what's happening. But we have to be willing to jump into the story like that. And that's what I always said, that if you want to know why it's so amazing, wait until you hear the story. But don't expect a simple story, and don't expect it to be straightforward like it's all makes sense, because there's going to be a lot.
Okay, so what is the story?
Well, I mean, I think we just spent half of a day, maybe 2 hours explaining a major chunk of it. But the story is everything is in communion. That what you're looking at here on the planet is basically also orgasmic organism. The only things that are tracked, though, are the things that are like somehow. So the only things in between that are the bridges. meaning the bridges in between you liking and preferring one thing over another while still in duality. So what happens is that perpetuator, though, is what we really find as our great challenge, because whatever's perpetuating the duality is what's causing us to not get that rest and not get that point where we fully charge up and say, okay, I'm fully awake, here's what I need to do. So, you know, that's what you're really dealing with here. It's quite amazing when you think about it, but quite terrifying if it's something that you can't figure out how to get yourself out of.
Well, I truly appreciate all the time that you've given me. I still have so many more questions, but I know that you have other callers that need to ask some questions.
Well, I'm sure they're going to ask the same questions. So if you have something to say, it's better to say it, because realistically, even if one person is listening, and that's what people need to know. Like, even if one person is listening.
Okay, well then, if that's the case, I have a question regarding the devil and the light. And whether one should be focusing on the light if the devil is the god of light. Okay. Or Satan is the...
Well, let's also remember that the spirits, because you can't see them, are also synonymous with ideas. So, and ideas also create energy and power. They're like bottled up energy and power. So the idea of the devil comes in the dualistic plane when there's an idea of a god. So you can also see that 8,500 years ago, God and the devil, which is a two-faced Janus, was introduced to everyone, that there was a good force and a bad force. And then all religions basically function upon that: you do good or you do bad. Not if you do something that is not correct, you're going to get instructions for it and you're going to keep expanding. It's just a pop on the hand, sometimes death, and that's the next level. So let us see that in the beginning, there was no ideas of these gods and devils. Now that there's an idea of that, there's actually eidolons, or thought forms, that have been consecrated, that exist as the embodiments of these ideas, that have become animate. Meaning that if a person starts worshiping the devil, something will indeed appear, and they will feel things, and things will happen, because there are so many individuals that have done that. So now when we're talking about the light, then we're talking about one extreme. If they're not saying full spectrum light, that's why you have to be specific with the codes in the matrix. Full spectrum light, it sends out 7 rays. It sends off all the colors that are necessary to create anything in the matrix. Light, in its tense of especially how it's visualized, is just white. Now, that light is often more blinding than it is revealing, and it's also synonymous with Lucifer, the fallen star from Venus. Now, how this works is that if you walk into a room, and let's say the sun is there, or somebody that is actually shining so bright that it's taking everyone's attention away from them, that is the idea of worship, because the only thing that's next for those people to do is to fall down and do that. And that's why the sun became synonymous with the serpent, and the serpent became synonymous with worship. So this idea of displaying your power and your strength over individuals to cower them and to make them see, look, how low they are, is really what we're talking about, that entered in 8,500 years ago. So now what you still have is a more, I would say more, excuse me, but more in the sense of being what the term more means. But we are talking about an advanced being that is advanced with physical reality. So you may be a powerhouse on the spiritual plane, but if you end up on a material plane and then start thinking of yourself as a material person somehow through cunning, then you're on their playing field or their chessboard. And then now all of the physical laws and rules apply to how you're progressing. So what you're dealing with is now you have these brotherhoods and sisterhoods that have put themselves together, that work and weave this system of control together. And it's not just rituals. It's also in business and money and all these different, country ties and wars, and all this kind of stuff actually keeps and perpetuates the system of, quote unquote, the adversary. Now, the reason why these words Satan and destroyer and devil, which it begins with D, and all destructive words begin with D, is the way it is because it's just known as the opposition or the opposer. And that's why governments are known to be satanic, because in a sense they opposed human rights. They oppose life. You see what it means? So when the terminology is used, they say the whole motif of the Saturn is that when death must be done, and we're living on a planet of death, then the energy that's assigned to that is assigned to Saturn. So what happens is that when we only see it that way, then we get basically, if you didn't get the rest of the story, like there's still another part to the story of Saturn. There's another part to, just as every planet has two sides, there's another part. So, but if they only idolize and glorify one part, and then they have everyone in the reality doing that, then we're dealing with something where when you think of, when you can tie things together, like you tie in the devil, and then you tie in light, and then you can do that in your mind, then that's the action that's been carried out. So this is what you need to, so just so you understand it like this, and this is important because I actually meant to bring this up in this conversation. All of this stuff, especially if it's written, if it's a symbol, especially, is in itself inanimate. It can do nothing without you. This is why you always see, like there was a clip from, because I can actually play that clip. There's a clip from the David Bowie movie where the girl is confronting him and it's 13 o'clock on the clock. And he says, look, all you have to do is fear me and I'll serve you. I'll do everything for you. And this is the entire idea of this kind of energy. Is because it knows that the trap is within the fear. So it's when you're dealing with, so what I'm saying is that when you're living in a world that can tie these kind of things together for you, there'll probably be no end to that. Meaning that they'll probably say, well, actually this language has to do with the devil. Then they'll say, okay, well, these cars are the devil. And then then pretty soon what happens? Everything becomes the devil, right? So you see the trick to the entire thing is that if they can create the devil in the beginning, then they can also become the devil in the end. And then when everyone becomes afraid of the devil and then fear keeps them from leaving, then they will get to exactly where they are today, which is everyone kind of fears to actually approach them on the level that they have to be approached on. Now, notice when I said on the level that they have to be approached on. Now, they're not physical. That's the thing. They deal with spiritual. That's why they carry numbers like 8. They carry numbers like 6. They deal with spiritual planes, the ones that master over the physical or the 5 base planes. So what happens is that you're basically needing to understand the other part of how to operate yourself in order to be able to overcome on that level. Because you're talking about something that is existing within what you would think is your mind, but actually your spirit. And then when that starts to not get solved, meaning the riddle to the devil is that all is self. It's just an idea. All ideas are still subservient to you. They all have to bow down and prostrate if you tell them to, but not other people. So that's what the ancient teachings are only based on how to be Lord and Master and all those grand terms over yourself. It never talked about doing any of that to any external worlds. So because what has been given to you and what has been given to you is what you have to manage. And so it's like you can make children, you can do many different things, and that's what you have to manage. But when you start going into other people's children, when you start taking other people's families and things, now you have to, you open up an entirely different level, an entirely different system. And humanity happens to be living in one of those systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for your answers. I'm really very appreciative to your website, and I've gained so much more information that's helping me along my way, and I truly appreciate you and the work that you're doing, and I thank you so much.
Oh, you got it, Julie. Wholeness. Like I said, we're here to do as much as we can to get the message clear. It is a lot to absorb, especially in one day, and then sometimes articulating things properly within a language that is riddled with puns and double words and double bindings, etc. It becomes a little bit difficult. Yeah, and but that also again authenticates things further, because why would you want to confuse yourself? Meaning that why would you, if you were really caring about, like your child, you teach your child a language, you want to teach your child a language that they're going to be able to fully progress with, not a language that's going to trap them and bind them because it doesn't really mean anything. Nothing is solid. And see, that's why they say this is synonymous with law, like legal jargon. What's being called now, I believe it's quantum wording or something like this. But basically, it's when you see why they talk on those writs and those contracts all strange, like to writ, this person hereby claimed as blah, blah, blah in quotations. And there's like this weird, they call that Babel. This is also another language. And this is why when you go into a courtroom, there's a lot of jargon that's going on that is not complete. If as a human being that speaks English, it's like, okay, well, that's not a complete sentence. So why are they talking that way? And they're talking that way because they don't talk the way that we do. You see what I mean? Like if you go into one of these palaces in Switzerland, and you get to that guy that's right there, I can guarantee you he's not speaking English. I can guarantee you he will not even use English. Because when you mean what you say, you have to mean what you say when you're moving quick. Remember, quick is not necessarily a part of being good or bad. It's actually a level of knowledge. So what happens is that when you get to the point of meaning what you say, what happens when everything that you say actually manifests? And then what happens if you keep saying the wrong thing? This is the next. Exactly. So this is the next level from when you're moving from the middle level of the spiritual experience all the way into now the depth of meaning. It's your responsibility to what you're saying. You have to know what you're saying. So here's the big expansion for humanity now, especially those that speak English. If you actually know what English means, and you can break it down enough, the mind really does the rest, and it starts canceling out and reconfiguring things that you say when you say them, because now you're having to use the language. So it's just going to help you along until you get to the next level of communication. But notice how people like George Bush speak when he spoke about Iraq. He said, and when we do what we need to do, and we will, which it will be. So there's something that he needs to keep confirming every sentence with an actual double confirmation. And it's because it's a spell, like it needs double confirmation. You see what I mean? So there's this other level, and I don't advise people to go and start studying how spell works, etc. That we're talking about a completely more expanded system in itself. It starts inside. Like you're looking outside of it, it's kind of like the movie, I'm not sure if you've seen it, it's Dr. Parnassus' Imaginarium, but there's one character in it that's actually playing the devil, and he tells the guy that when you figure out what that hocus pocus devil mumble jumble stuff and all the rest of the things mean, you let me know. Meaning that people have created so many different rules and laws, like grab the beak of an owl on the full moon and this, and we're acting like our ancestors weren't deeply engaged in this kind of behavior in searching for what? You see, now we get to actually the real nature of who we are, is that we had to have our parents. Meaning we have to have the connection with our ancestral lines or our story of where we exist at, or we look to the sky and we look everywhere else beside where it really is. So that's almost like a trap. If you're let out into an external reality and then you're trying to find yourself, basically the oversoul, in the external reality, you'll never find it. But what if the external reality was wholly comprised of only individual pieces of you? This is why they call him the divisor, because the snake is a part of us. The cow is a part of us. The dog is a part of us. The plant is a part of us. It's all inside of us, inside of our genes, right? But what if someone goes in the DNA and extracts it, incubates it, and then puts it into an external reality, and then puts it right in front of you? And then you say, I like cats, but I don't like cows. And I don't like... So now what you're actually saying is, I like my hand, but I don't like my leg. And I like my butt, but I don't like my eyes. Now, if this seems so foreign, isn't this kind of how people talk when they get in the mirror? They say, oh, I like the way my hair looks, or I like this about myself, my waistline, but I don't like... You see what I mean? So this is what we're really talking about. We're talking about a world of division. We're talking about a world with so many choices. The only thing that they've been trying to do is create more choices. There's more phones, more iPhones, more computers, more games, more this, more. But that just keeps us running in one direction. That's why we know it's either centripetal or centrifugal. There is something about when you're backing out of dimensions, it's almost like having a car. You put it in reverse, it backs up. So there's some basic principles about how to actually change things around, especially if you perceive them going in the wrong direction. But they forgot to tell you that there are layers to you. So you may put one part of yourself in the right direction, and then the other part is still going in the wrong direction. You see what I mean? So this is where it requires you to become like this adept, this lord, this master, or whatever over the body, because you have to be able to say, look, you're going this is going in the wrong direction. And it's also dragging the other ones down, the other ones that we did so much work on, meaning that if you do a lot of work on your mind, but you're letting your body drag you down, a simple strategy is within your mind. You say, look, man, either you got to shape up or you got to go. This is how I talk to myself. And it's a real thing, because guess what? I know that in the end, it's just going to be you. This is how you came into this. So obviously, when it's time to exit and go through the portal, doesn't matter. I'm sure. Look at this. Notice this. When you come into this world, it's just you, you're solo, right? For that moment, right? But the moment that you go through the canal, you come out on the side, who's all around? Tons of people. It's just about how fast, how much you want to stretch out the radius. You can go thousands, hundreds, millions. You can just keep spinning out the radius, right? So if it's an as above, so below thing, when you go through whatever they're calling death, when you come out on the side, it's going to be fully populated. So it's the same thing. It's just another a reflection of what you was that you were before. So the next level of thinking for humanity is what if I told you that you can actually govern what experience that you went in and out of? And what if I told you that there was something maliciously installed here that wanted to make sure that you kept going into realities that were mastered by these malicious entities, meaning that if you keep coming into realities where all this hanging around is pentagrams and stuff, and then, you know, everything's kind of weird, you can't really get into it, and then for some reason you make sense of it and you find yourself doing it and then you're trapped, that still doesn't say that it can't happen to you. Now what we're at is actually a level where we're realizing, oh, maybe that's what happened. Maybe I made a wrong turn. Maybe I went left when I should have went right. How can I back out of this thing? And that's what, there's that option, because see, the thing is that there's no limitation. That's why the whole riddle within this blaming something for your sins, etc., is actually encased within you. You are the Messiah, because you're the only one that can decide to forgive yourself. And then what happens is if you choose something else to actually say that it's going to be able to expiate you from your sins, right when you're about to die, you really feel more than anything that it hasn't. But even if you're the most staunch, greatest believer, it will happen at that point. So the ancient book said never wait until that time. No man can die or no woman can die for another. Because here's the thing. This is still a code of death, the code of Amun or Amen. Why are we still thinking about death and it being darkness and scary? Why don't we start talking about investing into a more expansive spiritual existence once we leave here? And why don't we talk about actually going there now so it's not so fictitious? Because why is everyone still acting like there's no astral plane and there's not real spiritual bodies and spirits running around? You see how like only a few people, like I guess Credo Mutwa said, please tell humanity to be considerate of those who've seen the Chittawuli, sir. But basically saying, look, tell humanity that be a little bit considerate. Just because you guys haven't seen anything running around or any other creatures besides yourself, they're doing that on purpose. If they could rewind it and Photoshop it out for you and put one of those Mission Impossible mirrors in front of it, they'll do it. Like they were showing on the Olympics, how there was actually a craft in the sky. And what happened was when they were shooting off all the fireworks, there was too much light for it to, whatever it uses as a cloaking device, to keep itself cloaked. But this is the behavior of these beings. Like, don't think that, oh, yeah, extraterrestrials. No, they would have went all the way to space and still wouldn't have took you. Because they do it now. The guy jumps from the plane from the Red Bull thing, but it will be only him. They don't, like, how many astronauts are there? You can still count them on a few digits, but the thing is that it's not everyone. And here it is, the potential of it even being you is not realistic. So what do we have to do? We have to look back to when we can make it happen even if we wanted to. When you go to sleep, if you have the mind power, and many people have generated it before, you are the astronaut. You actually can run out the whole procedure with buzz there and everything. So there is this part of us that does have the ability to wholly construct environments based on our choosing. But notice how that also we're being locked out of. Let's not, again, play the game here. Our dream world is so sporadic that we can't tell what we're going to dream about from day to day, nor what that dream was inspired by. Some of the dreams are so far off and so crazy, it doesn't even match up to anything that's going on in your life. But it's something that you get an image of. So we know that, but we also know that there's individuals, they're called lucid dreamer, I've been one myself, that can fully control the dream. And you feel more. Meaning that anything that you do in the dream, you can eat something in the dream and it tastes better than it tastes here. How does that work? It's because there's another expanse, Julie. There's another actual dimension, for better lack of words, because a dimension just means a spatial, that you...
Is that what you call a parallel world?
Parallel world, in a sense, well, parallel world kind of loses the concept because, again, the parallel world means the opposite of the dual world. What this is it's like a gate to unlimitless. And the only thing that's happening, though, is in the external reality, we often take the tools that we get here, chairs, cars, etc., and then we bring them into that world and start building that world with those tools. But had we never arrived on Earth or a place where there was such devices called such things, then there would be no dream world in which those things exist. So, since the dream world is heavily connected with the aura, now you actually get the connection to the bridge of the reincarnation of the souls. Reincarnation of the souls come with the mind actually attaching itself to certain integers that it believes as fact and truth. This is generally called a binding. Now, this is not just something as simple as Disney's Cinderella. This has something to do with things even deeper, like cities and states, voting, those religious preferences, things that have a spiritual nature into how they're binding. So this is why they don't want you to accept that there's a spiritual vessel that you're in possession of, because they want to impound that. Because here's the thing, all this is about is energy. So if we can already see the potential of the energy behind some of the elements that are here, but all those elements are actually inside of us, then it is our energy and our potential that is being looked at the most as being the best commodity. And it can never be as such. It can never be different. They can say as much as they want that humans are not really this, and humanity is, useless eating, all this crap that they love to say, just a demeanor. He's the wretch. He's the one, the sin, the spot, the stain, the atom, the imperfection. This is what all these words really mean, right? So then when you see that's just belittling, that's just degrading. That's not telling the truth. That's a bigot. That's someone who actually thinks that they're on top, but by their behavior is really lower. So if we accept what they do and start to aspire to become like them, i.e., I want to be Illuminati, I want to be Mason, I want to be, etc., then we inherit all of what they are still running from. Basically, it's like the scapegoat itself, and this just came last night, by the way, is blaming someone else for what you did. It's like throwing them in the way of the karma that's coming to get you. Humanity has become like that for these beings. Listen to what I'm saying. When something has been doing something so wrong, the only agreement that it can come to is a possible sacrifice. And then they've taught this to humanity too. What this is really about is it lies within the deepest religion. It lies within Christianity. It's known as the ram in the thicket. This is when Abraham is there about to sacrifice Isaac, then they say the angel comes down and stops him from sacrificing. That's not what happens in the real book. In the real book, the sacrifice continues to take place. And the ram is symbolic of the planet Jupiter, who is the deck. And that's the same sacrifices that were taking place first, because those were a part of the laws of Hammurabi's code. So you see, there was a whole environment that was completely hostile to us that was brought forth. And this is what they said. They said, if man does these type of things when the tree is green, what will he do when the tree is bare? Meaning that when you see what was going on in the world back then, which is still actually taking place now through the major wars, if we don't do something about this situation, how will these people that are latched a hold of this virus act when it starts to look like we're running out of resources? Meaning the tree becomes bare. Right now, Earth is fruitful. She's giving as much as she can, but it's hard for her. And we see this within women. As my wife said, it's very difficult to see that it takes so much to raise a baby, but you throw them on the battlefield, they'll kill them in one day. As if they don't even respect how much time the mother puts into actually bringing one of these beings in the world and how much labor she's gone through, and then not paying her for her labor. This is a slaver. And that's why I said the reptilian or from Orion, I'm not saying all reptilians, but I'm talking about Orion reptilians have been convicted already for being galactic slavers. And it's unfortunate that they have found willing vessels, as George Bush says, willing vessels on earth that they can just go inside because they need the 3D body to carry out what they need. And who these individuals are definitely the individuals that you see that are purporting death. And again, you get a lot of the, you don't get a racial card, because some people will say, well, is that the white man? Is that the blonde-haired and blue-eyed because he's more susceptible to being cold? No, it's also, actually, no and yes. It's not just the blonde hair and blue-eyed, and it's also not just the black hair and dark-eyed. What it is the person who has the inclination to where when their urges rise up, they cannot control them. And so this is an ode and a testament to all of us. It's not just one particular race. I've seen it all across the board. And that's also where you get these two sides volleying, like the Democrat, Demus, the demon, and Republican, repeating the reptile. Okay, so the demons and the reptiles. So now you have these two forces that say, choose me or choose me. Why not choose none of you? You see, that's what the choice really is for us, is that we have to see these forces as exactly what they are. They've only agreed in certain areas to make themselves transparent, or basically not able to be seen. It's like, so it's like, okay, they use the codes and the laws and the rules, but they're still at war with each other internally, but they're not at war about not letting anyone else know the codes, laws, and rules that are not inducted into their societies. You see what I mean? So it's basically like there are rules amongst these thieves. Or is it really thieves? Because that's, again, the place. It's the Theban priesthood. Theban or Theban means a serpent. So when you go into the etymology, it's riddled everywhere within even the ancient languages. So it doesn't become just a David Icke love affair with some reptilian queen. It actually becomes an entirely different expansion of how the mind is being controlled and kept in the 5 senses. Because remember what we said, it's pent. Serpent, the Sir of 5, the Lord of 5. So 5 senses. Oh, they know everything about 5 senses, but when you ask them about the 6th sense, they get quiet. Right? Look at how the world operates. It knows everything about the 5 senses: taste, hearing, France, the taste. You know, everything else about
So you're talking about, is the 6th sense, is that your intuition?
Yes, anything beyond the 5 sense, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that 6th sense, that intuition, that non-linear part of you that is able to go into the expanse, also called the RAN, and actually check and see if there may be something that you need to avoid in the future, or of what you're calling the future. You see what I mean? But really what it is your oversoul outside of this. That's why I said on the other side, you're on the other side, but excuse me, it's getting confusing, but you also have a correspondent to you on the other side. And you can find this riddle within the Bible of why God needs to change his whole story about being inside of the universe. See, if you read the real text of when Yaldabaoth is speaking, he speaks from inside of the universe as if he's limited, or excuse me, it is limited to the universe. See, anytime you speak from the inside of something, that means you've already been swallowed by it. So if you're saying that you're greater than it, then why are you inside of it? You see what I mean? So that's why the story had to switch from the God, quote unquote, not being something that was of earth and something that was here, because that was the original story. See, God was originally synonymous with the serpent. God was Gud, who's Goth. And he's the Gothic serpent from the Druids. The Druids, which are the ones that carried across the cold of Bohemia, which is, of course, Aleppo in the connection with the Bohemian Grove and the military, etc., and all of what goes on in the United States. The Emirs, which are also the bird ones, they carry the falcon as their bird. And these, of course, run into the cults of the Aryans, and also those who speak the Ophanic language, which is, of course, the language of the bird. But then you find that oath actually still means snake, so showing you the connection. So it just means that there's those who run the higher levels of the political Orion chain hierarchy, club tetragrammaton, I call it. And then there's those that have to carry the lower portion of it. And that's why it's seen as 2 pyramids, or 2 triangles, excuse me, interlaced or stuck together, just as you see that the Great Pyramid is synonymous with it having that same pyramid on its below. So it's really a diamond. Now this, of course, the word diamond is synonymous with the word daemon or demon, because it actually tells you the secret of when spirit interlaces with spirit, a spiritual communion. So I didn't say flesh interlacing with spirit. Flesh interlacing with spirit is when you interlace a pentagram over a hexagram. The communion of spirit to spirit is the hexagon itself, because it's 2 triangles. A triangle was synonymous with the spirit. So it's a little, so when you're going through this geometry, this is what it means to them, by the way. Some people have come to entirely different understandings of it. And this is because there's at least 900 ways to explain anything in a brain that has taken in English. So what happens is at certain times when it comes to your meditation, this doesn't mean don't learn it, don't just go ahead and what they call dumb out. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying understand that demarcation when you go into connecting with Oversoul, you switch it off. And then you also got the t-shirt, meaning that you know the codes to this program because that's the only way you're going to get other individuals out that you say you care about. And this, of course, also becomes why you have fuel and you don't feel discouraged, because some people say, this is an immense task, I feel discouraged. You actually look at that there is a way to expand these individuals. Now you're going to need to be the bridge. So the more damage that they take is only because you haven't pushed yourself more to actually give them that solution. Meaning that each of us does contain the solution to one degree or another for the individuals that are around us. But where does it start? It starts with us first. And hence we coined the term understand, which actually means, you have to get yourself done first before you start to begin to work on somebody else. But as I said, if you're in a brute force reality, a physical plane, so at times you need to work on it on a physical level first and just clean out the body and then see. Just like the doctor told me, the one who taught me about my body, a naturopathic doctor, he said, I like what you're saying. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. He said, I like what you're saying, but I could tell by your eyes your body is just so toxic. Let's clean out your body and then let's see what you say after that. Because in Iridology, of course, you can look in a person's eyes and tell everything. Now, of course, the eye is the gateway to the soul, and this will also show you why you have a certain level of intuition by looking in a person's eyes. You can tell, oh, this person's not somebody I can really trust. So where does that come from? That's because they have an actual writer. This is a term I'm using now. It's kind of funny to me a little bit. But you have a writer that is not able to be trusted. You see, so what happens is the spirit will actually change the appearance of a person. If you can notice the actual slight differences and stop looking at everyone as if they look the same, you will start seeing certain things, characteristics that you can know other individuals carrying. It's the same. It's a strange thing. Is if the two individuals are infused with the same soul, but yet you know that there's something that's different about each of them. What is it? It's because many of these energies are large. Like all the terms for the larger whales and behemoth, etc., were synonymous with the gods because the spirits of these entities could fill several humans at one time. And that was known as an orgy or Ogygia, the original name of Egypt, which was basically seen as serpents going into a session with each other like the rites of Bacchus. Really what it is it's Holy Ghost. It's when a lot of people get into a room together and actually start chanting the same vibration until they link up with that biorhythm. And that's why I call it Club Tetragrammaton, because everyone is pretty much on that same language system. And then what they'll see, everyone is still on that same vibratory frequency when they practice in certain churches and temples and mosques, etc. And so when they reach into this higher state of consciousness, oftentimes the language in which that they call tongues is none other than ancient Tamil. And that's why it actually sounds the same, but it's called the language of the serpent. But the Bible tricks everyone and says this is going to be the language that is too deep for Satan to understand. No, that's not what it really means. This is the language that they actually speak. So, get it right. So this is the thing. That's why because remember, the serpent can't speak the same language of man because the serpent doesn't have a voice box. But I was just saying, for us I think it's fascinating once again if we study the species, because there's also an entirely different story about the amphibian. The amphibian itself was actually created to be the bridge between the mammal and the reptile. So when you're still looking at, before 8,500 years ago, somebody really was attempting to put this thing together so that we all can expand and learn from each other and the beauty of what was going on in the universe. And then someone decided that they were better than all the rest of us. You see, that's all you're really dealing with here. It's not a complex component to really divine, but you're talking about the raising up of something else over the other. But the amphibian, again, as a bridge, you'll see that there's a heavy connection with the amphibian and also the Mesoamerican tribes. Also put under the terms generally as Guanacaste, the Guava, Guanabana, all the different Gua that you see in languages is the text of the Guana, or Guanacaste means the Guana castle. So while there's still all this focus on maybe one particular entity, whether it be Anubis or the dog or the Anunnaki as they call it, all of these energies are just wrestling for attention, just as a star in Hollywood would actually wrestle for more attention to keep more fans, or things to keep it cool while it's hot. You see what I mean? So all of again, the wording and the riddle is put together. It can be put together by the individual now. I can't say that our ancestors within the last 300 or 400 years, maybe even 1,000, 2,000, and it looks like maybe 8,500 years have not had an opportunity to do this. So if you're looking for whatever 2012 was supposed to bring and why they call it the end, it's because it's the end of their foolishness. And their foolishness has really been going on for 8,500 years. I just don't, it's baffling, especially only living at 72 years now, because we're counting using their time system. Chronos is the god of time. Thus, one can dictate when it's one day and when it's another day, and when things are going faster and when things are going slower. Have you not noticed that the days these days go by a lot faster than the ones from the old days? When you used to go out?
Guys getting older.
Exactly, but well, no, that's not what it is. It's things are speeding up because everyone wants to go faster. The time where we all get, we get things that go faster. Look at it. Everything's about faster. We want a faster computer. We want a faster car. We want a faster way of traveling. So that's just the mode of how life is. But what if something wants to keep you from going fast? And that's what we're talking about. Then what happens? You get tired. We're not supposed to be asleep. As I said on the other show, does the sun sleep? So surely the soul doesn't sleep. So why is the soul sleep? It's not the soul that sleep, it's the body. Watch this. So just because like right now the soul is it's up, it's awake, it's listening. You're up, it's awake, right? So when you go to sleep, it doesn't go to sleep, it goes to the dream world. It never sleeps. But when you're flesh identified more, which is just as a simple check, it's not saying anything bad about anyone, but this is how you check it. If you're flesh identified, then you feel sleepy too. And that's of course the drawback of when you're in actual fleshly realities and it's still an illusion. Only illusion because they're saying that someone is over you. I have to clarify that. It's an illusion because the law says that there's someone over you. There's no one over you. You see, in reality, in the universe, great expanse, all it is, no laws, no rules, no one's over you. That's how it works. But in a matrix, there is someone over you. So thus has been put forth a law that's not true, a foundation of lies. So now the lies are big. And this is why when you go into, like I said, you go into these courtrooms and things of that nature, everyone is all initiated into one club. And it's because it's basically the club of liars. They are trapping humans, like even with, like I said, a radar jammer. You're flying down the street, you're speeding. Next thing you know, you're in one of their courtrooms. Now you're signing their papers. Now they're telling you got to pay them now. See, I'm not telling people to be anarchists and not to do it. I'm just telling them to look at what is actually happening. What happens if their rules and things expand and they want more? And the reason why I started to look deeply into especially these type of societies who are doing this was from a recent story that I just discovered about how they took Hawaii. And that basically what has been occurring is that the postmaster is really the military and the rest of what you see as far as government organizations, etc. Because it's been since even before the Pony Express that they've been controlling the highways and the byways. So what's happening is that where Hawaii is actually positioned is in the place where all ships that were going across the Pacific Channel had to stop at Hawaii in order to refuel for coal. And of course, Hawaii's got plenty of coal because they got plenty of volcanoes. So King Kamehameha and the rest of that royal line, which is another king or prince or whatever on the earth that we don't really have much data on where they came from and who they really are. But once they realized that this stronghold was in place, then this group of secret societies devised a way to actually steal Hawaii. And how they did that was once incorporating Hawaii as a state, which they thought that was a privilege, they actually started passing laws that really meant they were going to take 10 years to go through. That way, once somebody was dead and that, laws and other things could be passed. But basically that law states that if you're off your land or the heir of the land is off the land for a certain amount of time, then that land is up for grabs. So imagine this is craziness, but this is the law. You see, this is how the law can be used to work for an individual, and they can pin and bind other human souls into their mess. So so check this out. So then they take a huge chunk of the land, which clearly shows that they were hey, this land is ours. And then so immediately a lawsuit, since they're now a part of the state of the United States, was brought against these people who took this land that were part of multiple folds of organizations, etc. But when the case was about to be heard, the judge in the court said, this is not my jurisdiction. This is not my case. I can't. This is a state court. You're looking to do something else. We can't handle that here. And they did it all the way up until the Supreme Court, until the Supreme Court said the same thing, because the actual treaty in which that was written, that was modified and ratified, says that such things could be done. And now Hawaii no longer belongs to the Hawaiians. It belongs to the Masons. So you see that this is really not a game, because when you can actually take someone's land that you can actually still prove that they were the original people on that land, how long is it until they start to come and take other kind of land? I'm not talking about physical land, because I'm not into the flesh. When are they going to start taking souls? And then I realized, Julie, that they've already been doing it. And this is where the religions and all these things come in, is that we keep getting our souls hijacked, basically, every lifetime, dealing with these laws, these rules, these creeds, these edicts and stuff that we're struggling to learn. And somebody needs to come to us and let us know how to shut it off. Meaning that once we start to try to find out the knowledge, that's why you notice in the beginning they talk about it's the tree of good and evil. It's the knowledge of the tree of knowledge, okay? So once in eating this tree, this means that you now have to get to the bottom of things before you feel that you've gotten satiated and full, right? Like let's say, for instance, you eat from a tree, but you don't get enough. You seem to want more. So this means that whatever you're eating is actually causing you to continuously consume it. Knowledge is like this. The more you learn, the more you feel like you need to know, right? So that's, of course, where all the language and things comes in at, because if it's language that's trying to instruct you on what you should and should not be doing, then, it becomes an entirely different component for you to learn. What you have to do is you have to really work with more. Actually, you don't have to do anything. What you can get to do is that you can go inside and actually start looking at how the order of life is from the time that your conception into this planet, and how you progress. Your mother, her name, the hospital you've been in, all these different things that show you what your progress really through the ocean was. Because you're just only living out a physical version of the same thing, but you just need to understand what things mean. And so hopefully that really, this conversation gives you more clarity on getting closer to that. I think that that's something that we're all really working towards. It's a good thing that we can actually do that together. But it is a major thing. Like, we've been cracking through a lot of what's going on because we want to know. I don't see it as right that we can't even tell our children, the child says, where's God? Can you take me to God? No, I can't. Well, I thought you said he was our father. You see, it doesn't, like, they're going to start asking those questions. Like, remember, just because the populace doesn't ask those questions, it doesn't mean that the children won't not only try to ask us those questions, but also just ask themselves if they can't get an answer from the reality. And I'm one of those children. I kept asking the question about, but what about this? Even when I got into a level of being 24, 25, and even learning and adhering to Gnosticism, still asking the question, like, well, why? What is this? So that's going to get us to, the answers. And if something is uncomfortable with giving us the answers, that's the first set of discernment that tells us maybe something's not right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you got it. So that's it.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, wholeness. All right, everyone. So that's going to do it for today's show. We went for about 3 hours. I guess it was a special show. We got off to a slightly slow start, but looks like towards the end we definitely were able to get some information out, especially about, expansion, because it's a big thing. Like, I really want to see everyone be able to enjoy the feeling of clarity within inside themselves, and knowing exactly who they are and what they came to do, and then also being able to identify and check any kind of energies or entities that are actually approaching them, asking for or looking for some type of agreement or something that you can help them with. Now, here's the thing. If someone, like, let's say for your family, says, hey, can you help me do something? It doesn't mean that you decide that you're not going to help them and do anything because you feel like that they're a bad spirit. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about abusing the knowledge. What we're saying is that understanding each move that you make and actually being fully conscious in the moves that you make, so that way these other individuals can see that maturity coming from you and can start also making the same decisions themselves with how they carry on. So you don't let people overstep their boundaries with you, but you also don't close yourself up and act like you're going to just, dig yourself into a hole and not see what you can do about this situation that's taking place here on Earth. Because, hey, we're in this. It's going on. If you want to be in the illusion, you can just drone out real quick and be like, That's just what's life. No, man, this is more than life. It's more than one word. Wholeness.